Good morning, everyone who's joined us and is still joining us. Welcome to our UC IPM Urban and Communities brand new invasive species webinar series. This is the first in our little mini series of webinars on invasive pests and some of their impacts. And we really appreciate you joining us for this. I'm Cherie Rojas, the Associate Director of the Urban and Community Unit within the UC statewide IPM program. We are excited to have Cherie Shook and Lindsey Hack presenting today on invasive pests you might find in your edible garden. Cherie and Lindsey are dedicated invasive species educators for UC IPM who actively track emerging pest threats in California. They focus on the identification, impact, and reporting of invasive pests, working with UC master gardeners to ensure the communities have the resources to stay informed and prepared. With expertise in outreach and education, they are here to provide up-to-date insights on invasive species issues in California. Thank you for joining us, Cherie and Lindsey. You may now share your slides and begin.
Thanks again, Cherie. And hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us. I'm Lindsey Hack.
And I'm Cherie Shook.
And today we're going to talk about invasive pests that impact your edible garden. We'd like to start off with a quick overview about what invasive species are and why they matter. So invasive species are non-native, which means that they do not occur naturally in a particular place. Not all non-native species are invasive. Some non-native species, such as many of the crops we eat, are also non-native, but are not harmful and not considered to be invasive species. Invasive species are defined as non-native species that can harm the environment, the economy, or public health. They tend to have certain characteristics that help them spread easily, including the ability to adapt to many different environments, the ability to reproduce quickly, and lack of natural predators where they're spreading outside of their native habitats. All kinds of organisms can be invasive, including plants, invertebrates, vertebrates, and pathogens. So why should we care about invasive species? They impact all of us in many different ways. They can negatively affect the supply of food and water, the environment, and sometimes public health and safety. Also, dealing with them is expensive. The global economic impact of invasive species has been estimated at $1.3 trillion over the past 50 years. In this talk, we're going to focus on invasive pests you might encounter in your garden, attacking commonly grown fruits and veggies like citrus, grapes, figs, tomatoes, cole crops, and more. Although we don't have time to cover every invasive pest that can impact edible gardens or go into too much detail about the ones we do cover, we will provide resources to help you learn more in our follow-up email that we'll send after the webinar. First, let's talk about a few invasive species that impact citrus trees. One relatively common invasive citrus pest is the citrus leaf miner. It's a small light-colored moth that's less than a quarter-inch long, and it arrived in California in 2000 and is now widespread across the state. The larvae are tiny grubs that tunnel through the underside of citrus leaves, and these prefer to feed on the tender new leaves at the tips of branches and remain inside of the leaves until they emerge as adults. You can most easily identify this pest by the serpentine or S-shaped tunnels in the leaves, as you can see in these two photos on the right. And also the leaves can become stunted and twisted from the damage caused by the feeding larvae, which can also be a sign of infestation. A similar moth species you might see on your citrus trees, the citrus peel miner, which is right here on the right, may be mistaken for citrus leaf miner. Unlike citrus leaf miner, the citrus peel miner is native to the southwestern US, but it can also be a pest. The adults of citrus leaf miner are silvery white in color, while the citrus peel miner adults are brown. The main difference, though, is that citrus peel miner larvae burrow through the fruit peel and stems of citrus rather than the leaves, as you can see in this photo down here of citrus peel miner mines on the surface of a green citrus fruit, versus citrus leaf miner larvae usually only burrow through the leaves. Mature citrus trees aren't usually significantly damaged by citrus leaf miner, but young trees can be more susceptible. Because the larvae are somewhat protected inside of the leaves, spraying generally isn't the most effective control method for this pest. Citrus leaf miners are killed by many naturally occurring predators and parasites, also called natural enemies, that can be very effective in controlling this pest. And you can support these natural enemy populations by limiting the use of broad spectrum insecticides that can harm them and growing flowering plants that provide habitat for these beneficial insects. Careful pruning can also help control infestations of citrus leaf miner. You can avoid pruning live branches more than once per year because excessive pruning can encourage the plant to sprout excessive new growth, and this isn't very attractive to citrus leaf miners. Suckers and water sprouts are also a source of young leaves that attract this pest, so keeping those pruned is also helpful. Reporting this pest isn't necessary, but you can contact your local UC Cooperative Extension Office or County Agricultural Commissioner for more information if you think you have an infestation. So moving on to another citrus pest, an important one to know about that may be familiar to many of you is the Asian citrus psyllid, sometimes abbreviated as ACP. It's a small jumping insect whose adults are about 1/8 of an inch long, which is around the size of an aphid. You can see the adults here. They feed on all citrus varieties and other plants related to citrus, including many ornamental plants. And the adults, and how you can identify them, you can look for the adults, which feed at a distinctive 45-degree angle that you can see in the center photo down here. And you can also look for the nymphs in the lower left photo here, and they secrete distinctive waxy tubules that you can see coming out of them, these little white, this white material. And eggs and nymphs are typically found in the tender new growth of the plant, so that's where you would want to keep an eye out. The main concern with this pest is that it can transmit Huanglong Bing disease, which we're going to abbreviate as HLB. And this disease is also called citrus greening, and it damages and eventually kills citrus trees. And there, unfortunately, is no cure for Huanglong Bing. Symptoms of HLB include yellow mottled leaves that you can see here in the lower right, and irregularly shaped and colored fruit that you can see up here on the right. And also the fruit will become bitter. This disease can kill a healthy tree in as little as 5 years. If you suspect an infestation, particularly in an area where they've not been previously detected, report it to the California Department of Food and Agriculture. And we're going to abbreviate California Department of Food and Agriculture in this talk as CDFA. And you can also report this pest to your local county agricultural commissioner. There are some other things you can do to monitor for this pest and help prevent it from spreading. You can look for signs of ACP on the new growth of your citrus plants periodically and signs of disease on the fruit and foliage. Stay up to date on local quarantines for this pest. And also keep your citrus fruit and plants local, because movement of infested plant material or fruit can spread this pest to new areas. And finally, when planting a new citrus tree, buy it from a local licensed nursery. And just to quickly talk about this map, this map on the right shows zones in California where movement of commercially sold citrus is restricted. Although we're not talking about commercial produce in this talk, this map is helpful for seeing where the Asian citrus psyllid and Huanglong Bing have spread. There's a lot going on in this map, but most importantly, Zone 6, which is the zone in red down here, is the only region where both the psyllid and the disease have been found so far. The gray area on the map, which is Zone 1, shows areas where neither the psyllid or the disease have been detected. All of the other colors, besides red and gray, or zones 2 through 5 and zone 7, are areas the psyllid has been found, but not the disease. So just to sum up, Huanglong Bing has only so far been found in this red area down in Southern California. I'm going to briefly talk about one invasive pest you've probably seen, Argentine ants. And although these don't directly damage citrus, they can cause indirect harm to citrus and other perennial plants by making management of other pests less effective, which we'll talk about more on the next slide. The Argentine ant is a small, dull, brown ant about 1/8 of an inch long. They form very large colonies, feed on sweet things, and form distinct scent trails. This pest is very widespread in California, especially in Southern California and coastal areas, and there's no need to report it if you find it. But you might want to control it in your garden. This pest, Argentine ants, can be both an indoor and outdoor pest, but today we're just going to talk about the problems they can cause in the garden. The main problem with these ants in the garden is that they protect other pest insects. They consume honeydew, which is the sugary excrement many common pests like aphids and mealybugs secrete. In return, the ants actively protect these insects from natural enemies, as you can see in this photo of an Argentine ant defending ACP nymphs here by capturing a parasitoid wasp that kills ACP nymphs. So as you can see, this pest can really disrupt otherwise effective IPM programs. Another problem is that Argentine ants can clog irrigation sprinklers. So some things you can do to manage them outside include minimizing excess irrigation because moist conditions are favorable to Argentine ants. And you can also prune trees and shrubs that are infested with honeydew producing insects so that branches and leaves aren't touching the ground, other plants, or structures that ants can use as a bridge. And you can also exclude the ants from the trees or shrubs using a special sticky material like tanglefoot as a barrier. So to do this, you can wrap the base of the tree or shrub with duct tape or fabric tree wrap and apply the sticky material to that. You can find various sticky materials for this purpose at garden or hardware stores. Moving on to invasive pests that attack grapevines. The first one we're going to talk about is the spotted lanternfly, which is a large, showy plant hopper species. This pest is not in California, but it's an important insect to keep an eye out for. It's under an external quarantine in California, which means that there are measures being taken to prevent the introduction of this pest into our state. Adult spotted lanternflies are about 1 inch long and tend to aggregate in large groups. Immature spotted lanternfly that you can see in the center photo here are smaller and range in color from black to red with white and black spots. Spotted lanternfly is currently spreading rapidly in the eastern US, and you can see on the map to the right here where the infested areas are in blue. So the kind of damage they do, spotted lanternflies use their sharp, piercing, sucking mouthparts to tap into plant tissue and feed on the sap of a wide range of trees and woody crops. They particularly love grapevines and can significantly damage or kill them when feeding in large numbers. Their preferred host is tree of heaven. You can see a large mature tree of heaven in the photo in the lower right corner here. Tree of heaven is an invasive tree that is already well established and widespread in California. Because California has so much tree of heaven, it could facilitate the spread of spotted lanternfly if spotted lanternfly comes to California. How can you keep California spotted lanternfly free? Both tree of heaven and grapevines are good plants to monitor for spotted lanternfly, so keep an eye out if you're growing grapes in your garden. When traveling, especially through spotted lanternfly infested regions, check your vehicles and personal items for hitchhiking pests like spotted lanternfly, adults and nymphs, and their egg masses, which you can see in the photo to the right here on a blue dumpster. If you do spot spotted lanternfly in California, please report it to CDFA right away. Next up, the glassy-winged sharpshooter, which has a really long name, and we're going to abbreviate this pest as GWSS. This is a somewhat large brown leafhopper, about 1/2 of an inch long, and it's been present in California since 1994. It's established in most of Southern California and parts of the Central Valley. Their egg masses can be hard to spot, and infested plant material is a common way this pest spreads to new areas. The photo in the bottom right here has an arrow pointing to a glassy wing sharpshooter egg mass, so you can see how easy that might be to overlook. Although they're relatively large, adult glassy wing sharpshooters can be hard to spot because they'll move to hide behind stems and leaves when disturbed. This insect can feed on many different plants, but it's mainly a concern for grapes because it can transmit Pierce's disease, which we'll talk about in the next slide. Other insects, including some California native sharpshooter species, can also transmit Pierce's disease. However, glassy wing sharpshooter is a particularly effective vector because it tends to build up larger populations and fly farther distances than native species. Pierce's disease is caused by a bacteria that glassy wing sharpshooter can carry and transmit, Xylella fastidiosa. This disease has no effective cure, and it can kill grapevines within 1 to 5 years. Symptoms of Pierce's disease include yellowing between the veins on the first leaves of grape plants, which then revert to a normal appearance later, discoloration on the leaf margins, and vines that grow irregularly with green patches on them. Pierce's disease can look like damage from many other diseases and disorders, but its symptoms tend to start out on sporadic patches on the plant instead of impacting the whole plant right away, like abiotic disorders, like drought stress and frost damage. Like I said before, glassy wing sharpshooter is mainly found in Southern California and parts of the Central Valley that you can see in this map here in blue, or I guess the darker color blue. They both kind of look blue to me. Outside of infested regions, there are limited areas where glassy wing sharpshooter has been detected and eradicated or is currently under eradication efforts. They're kind of small, but you might be able to see these areas as little red dots on the map. If you think you've found glassy wing sharpshooter or Pierce's disease, especially outside of Southern California, contact your local UC Cooperative Extension Office or County Agricultural Commissioner. When purchasing new grapevines, inspect plants thoroughly for signs of pests or disease. This is really good to do before bringing any new plants home. If you have multiple grapevines, remove diseased plants to prevent the disease from spreading to your healthy plants. There's one invasive pest in California that specializes on figs, which is the black fig fly. Like I said, this is a species that only infests figs. They prefer unripe and unpollinated fruit. Females will deposit eggs in the tiny opening at the base of fig fruits. In the photo in the far right here, you can see a female laying her eggs. Black fig fly larvae feed on the inside of figs, causing damage that can lead to premature fruit drop. As the larvae mature, they exit the fig through a small hole on the fruit, which you can see in this second photo from the right here. To monitor for them, you can inspect your fig fruits for black fig fly damage by cutting them open and looking for brown damage. So this brown damage that you can see in this photo on the left. And in particular, inspect unripe fruits that have fallen to the ground prematurely because this could be a sign of black fig fly infestation. If you think you might have a black fig fly infestation, report it to your local UC Cooperative Extension Office, Agricultural Commissioners, or CDFA. This pest was first detected in Southern California in 2021 and has since been reported in 12 counties, mainly in Southern California, but also up north in Santa Cruz, Alameda, and Sacramento counties. The primary fig production zone is in the Central Valley between Merced and Fresno, and on the map here, that's the part in green. This region produces over 90% of the state's figs, and growers could be heavily impacted if the black fig fly spreads to this area. So to prevent spreading this pest, limit the movement of figs, particularly between infested and uninfested areas. Now I'm going to turn it over to Cherie to talk about more invasive pests in your edible garden.
All right. All right, we're going to continue on here. I'm going to take you through some more pests that will threaten your fruits and vegetables that we all love to grow. I get to start out with tomatoes. We all love our tomatoes, and I'm going to talk about 2 invasive pests, specifically the beet leafhopper and the South American tomato leafminer. You may have heard about them, you may have seen them. The beet leafhoppers, they're small, torpedo-shaped bodies, about 1/8 of an inch long. You might have seen them, they hop around your garden and you can't quite catch them. They're small, but they certainly are impactful, especially because they transmit the curly top virus. Their nymphs look pretty similar, just a little bit lighter in color. Their eggs, they like to hide them inside the plant tissue, so you're not likely to spot their eggs. And again, easy way to know that you have them in your garden is the way that they jump. They jump in short, rapid bursts. That's why they're called leafhoppers. And the biggest problem with these isn't the feeding damage, it's that they do transmit this curly top virus. And this virus can affect other crops, not just tomatoes, but that is one of the largest crops that it affects for home gardeners. But they do affect peppers, beans, beets, and some other vegetables. Once a plant is infected, it can cause stunted growth, curled, thickened leaves, and it reduces the fruit production. Once a plant has that curly top virus, there's no cure. So the best approach is prevention. And so we want to focus on detection of the beet leafhoppers. Again, those susceptible crops, tomatoes at the top of the list, but sugar beets, melons, peppers, beans, cucumbers, squash, pumpkins, spinach. Unfortunately, the beet leafhopper is established across much of California, and it does have a distinctive seasonal pattern. And you can see on the map there that I pulled from the CDFA website, there is a geographic footprint that CDFA follows, and they do surveillance across the seasons for this pest and very specific regions, San Joaquin, Sacramento, Central Valley, Salinas, and the Imperial Valley. They do focus on certain plant types when they're surveilling for this pest. So in your garden, the feeding alone won't kill your plants, but large populations, if they're allowed to build up, they can cause plant damage and they could even kill your plant. They'll cause yellowing leaves, dying shoot tips, and they do cause black sooty mold to build up from the honeydew that they excrete, again, in large populations if they're allowed to congregate on your plants. The biggest threat for this pest is the curly top virus. So our goal is to keep the population low and reduce the risk from that virus spreading. So in your garden, a couple of things we can do is, again, encourage those natural enemies, avoid broad spectrum pesticides. We want those lady beetles, those lacewings, those assassin bugs, pirate bugs, and spiders. The weed hosts that leafhoppers prefer are Russian thistle, fillery, lamb's quarter, goosefoot, wild mustard, and peppergrass. So if you can keep those away from your garden, check the surrounding areas, keep those away from your house, your community gardens. And always inspect your garden regularly, especially late in the winter and early spring when you're getting ready to start planting. If you spot the nymphs early, you can take some precaution to get them out of there. If you do see a lot of nymphs, there has been some success with horticultural oil or insecticidal soaps to prevent those nymphs from building up early on in the season. Unfortunately, the regular pesticides haven't been effective against the leafhoppers. So keep your garden clean of weeds, check your plants regularly, and act early to keep your tomatoes, peppers, and melons free from the beet leafhopper and protected against the curly top virus. We're going to move on and talk about the South American tomato leaf miner. The good news with this pest is it is not in California, is not present in California. This pest has been causing damage in other parts of the world, and we want to keep it out of California. One way we can do that is to make sure that all Californians are educated on what this pest looks like, the damage that it can do, and how we can watch for it. This is a reportable pest. This is something that if we see signs of it, we want to make sure that we keep an eye out for it and let our agricultural commissioners or CDFA know if we see any signs or symptoms of the tomato leaf miner. So this insect is a small silvery brown moth, about 3/16 of an inch long. You can see it in the upper right-hand picture there. The female moths lay tiny yellow eggs all over the parts of the tomato plant, the underside of leaves, blossoms, and even on the fruit. They can lay the eggs singularly or in small clusters, makes them hard to spot. When the eggs hatch, the larvae are really small, about a 64th of an inch. light yellow, green, or cylindrical in shape. The larvae are the biggest problem with this pest because they tunnel through the leaves, creating the mined or scribbled appearance, hence the name, the leaf miners. And they can bore into the flower buds, the shoot tips, and the fruit. The damage from these leaf miners, they weaken the plant, they reduce the growth, they distort and kill the buds, and they lower the fruit production. The leaf miners, the larvae will also damage the fruit internally. They make it unmarketable and inedible. If this pest were to establish in California, it would cause major damage to home gardens and our commercial tomato production across the state. We're asking that if you grow tomatoes, to inspect your plants regularly, especially the undersides of leaves and developing fruit, and you can report any suspicious damage. There are several lookalike pests. As with a lot of these invasives, we want to make sure that we're checking all parts and all types of pests. Up here in the picture here, this is a South American tomato leaf miner next to an adult tomato pinworm and adult potato tubeworm. You can see they look pretty much identical. These two pests are very common in California. The leaf miner, you can look for the twisting leaf mines and you can look for specific fruit damage. Again, this pest is not present in California. You just want to be aware of what's going on with our gardens and watch for signs of pests that are similar to this so that we always are aware of what's going on across California and in our gardens. Here's a couple more very similar looking pests. This is a tomato pinworm larvae. Here's a leaf miner fly larvae and an adult, another tomato pinworm larvae, a little bit older. There are several lookalike pests, but please be on the lookout for signs of the South American tomato leaf miner. You could submit any samples of leaves or fruit that you might suspect is possible South American tomato leaf miner larvae. You could always consult with your local master gardener or your ag commissioner if you think you might have an infestation of leaf miners or pinworms. There's some general leaf miner and pinworm management steps that you could take if you do have some of these in your pests, in your tomatoes. You can look for twisting, squiggly trails on your leaves, fruit with small holes or soft spots from the larvae boring inside, and wilting or damaged buds, especially on the younger plants. So the best thing you can do is you keep your plants healthy, especially with good watering habits. Stressed plants are more vulnerable to these pests. You can clip off and remove older infested leaves to reduce the number of larvae. Always inspect your fruit regularly and look for signs of burring or holes. And dispose of any infested fruit or plants in the trash, not the compost. One of the biggest ways that you could prevent this pest from spreading further leaf miners or pinworms is to avoid planting the host plants, like the tomatoes, in the same area for at least 3 months to break the pest life cycle. Again, if you notice these signs, leaf mines, larvae, or fruit damage, please don't ignore it. Consult with your UCC cooperative advisor, your ag commissioner, or a local master gardener group to help you identify what the issue might be. So I would like to plan for some cooler weather. Here in the Central Valley, it's been pretty hot. So we're going to talk about some of our cole crops and specifically the bagrata bug that likes to attack our broccoli, kale, and some other greens. This insect doesn't look like much. It's actually pretty tiny here. You can see up in the corners, about 1/4 of an inch long. But it can quickly damage your crops, especially during warmer times of the day, during the seasons when we're growing these crops. The bagrata bug is a type of shield bug, about 1/4 of an inch long, with a distinctive black body marked with orange or red patterns. The females are larger than the males, which you can see in the picture on the top there. They lay their eggs on the undersides of the leaves. You see on the bottom here. They're always hidden from view. And like other true bugs, they feed with piercing and sucking mouth parts, which allows them to drain the plant's juices. And these bugs love all the brassica plants, including broccoli, kale, cabbage, Brussels sprouts, mustard greens, radishes, and arugula. When they feed, they cause yellow or white spots, stunting and leaf wilting, and the young seedlings are especially vulnerable. Bergata bugs thrive in warm weather and can produce multiple generations per year, and they can build up rather quickly in a home garden. In order to protect your plants, check the undersides of the leaves for your eggs. They're clusters of the small shield-shaped bugs. Always check regularly because early detection is key. If the populations get too high, they can spread really fast across your garden. The Bergata bug does have some look-alike species, easy to confuse them for some other things. The biggest pest that it's confused for is the harlequin bug. Actually, I have a picture right here. This is the harlequin bug. On top of its back here is a Bergata bug. They share a shield-shaped body and the same kind of color patterns, but they are much smaller, about 1/4 of an inch. You can see up here in the top, here's next to a lady beetle and a shea stink bug. There's your Bergata bug. The Bergata bug does have a wide distribution range in the state that's reported in over 25 counties, both coastal regions and inland regions from Imperial Valley, Central Valley, and to the Bay Area. In order to manage these bugs, it's best to focus on prevention, take care of it early before it gets out of control. They move in during warmer times of the season, so proactive approach is better to prevent damage on your broccoli and kale and other crops. When you're starting your season, check your purchased plants and containers for pests before bringing them home. You don't want to introduce any new bugs to your garden. Once you've started your plants, monitor regularly for any feeding damage. That's usually the first sign of an infestation. Look for tiny white or yellow spots on your leaves or wilting seedlings. Good garden hygiene is one of the most effective ways to prevent Bergata bugs. And taking care of nearby plants that Bergata bugs prefer, like any mustard weeds, it's one of their favorite hosts and breeding grounds. Clear out plant residues after you harvest to reduce the number of bugs carrying over to your next crop. And remove other attractive host plants. Sweet alyssum is one of their favorites. If you have that in and around your property, it might be hanging out there. It might be a source of infestation for your other plants. When the bugs do appear, if they appear around your plants, physical removal is often the most reliable method. You can also make it a fun activity. Hand-picking the adults can keep the numbers down. Some people, you can actually vacuum them off the plants. It's another effective trick for the larger infestations. There are commercial traps available, but that really just helps monitor and or reduce the numbers slightly. And some people, they might want to immediately jump to some insecticides, but they're not really effective against Bergata bugs. It's really about monitoring and physically removing the pests. Start early and make sure you monitor your plants. Some invasive pests are picky, like the ones we talked about. They have a very small host range. Others, they're not as selective and they just want to eat everything in our garden. We're going to talk about a few of those. The first group we're going to talk about here is invasive fruit flies. You've probably heard about them in the news. They're one of the most destructive pests that we've seen, and California has faced a long battle with invasive fruit flies, and they have been repeatedly eradicated, and they are not established in California. The biggest problem with these pests is they lay their eggs inside the ripening fruits and vegetables. You can just kind of see them barely right here. And then they're passed around, they're spread, and they can quickly spread through an area before we even know we have them. Once they hatch, they destroy the fruit from the inside out. So by the time you notice the damage, it's too late. You didn't even see them coming. The invasive fruit flies trigger quarantine measures in California. It's important for us to monitor our fruit, look for bruises and blemishes on the outside of the fruit. If you're unsure, you can cut open the fruit and check inside for maggots. Avoid sharing fruit between houses, between different areas, and always check quarantines in your areas. Just this week, they lifted the quarantine in Alameda County that had been posted since, I believe, last September. It was in Alameda County for the Mediterranean fruit fly. So as of right now, California is completely free of invasive fruit fly quarantines, and let's keep it that way. Here's some examples. Again, here's those eggs more close up. They're laid just inside. And most of us wouldn't notice that in our fruit. Here's some examples of what the aftermath of those maggots eating the inside of the fruits there. And unfortunately, these fruit flies don't just appear on their own. They hitchhike on smuggled or imported fruit, and they can spread really quickly. So when traveling, please don't pack a pest. Oops, sorry. California uses quarantines and sterile insect releases, and they constantly monitor to keep fruit fly populations out of California. We can all help though. Please buy plants and produce from locally trusted sources. Check your fruits and vegetables often. If you are in a quarantine area, be sure to dispose of your fruits and vegetables properly to prevent the spread. And you can always go on the CDFA website, cafruitfly.com. You can learn about any quarantine areas, and you can get more information about invasive fruit flies in California. I'm going to quickly talk about the spotted wing Drosophila. You may have seen this in your garden. Nothing like the invasive fruit fly. It's a very small 1/16 to 1/8 of an inch little fruit fly. Kind of resembles the common fruit fly, but these ones will attack your soft fruits, your cherries, your blueberries, your raspberries, your blackberries. It's important for us to monitor and treat early. You can check your ripening fruit for prematurely rotting fruit that you wouldn't normally see. You want to dispose of that fruit in sealed plastic bags and make sure to take care of that and not let it spread. Here's some examples, some little maggots inside of the raspberries here. There's a teeny little raspberry, some cherries that show some damage. I want to talk about the brown marmorated stink bug. This is also known as BMSB. This can be a problem in your garden and inside your home. We'll focus more on the garden than your house. They're a stink bug about 5/8 of an inch long, typical shield bug. They do have distinct white bands on their antennae and long edges along their abdomen. The small white barrel-shaped eggs that they lay on the underside of leaves that we can look for. And the markings on their body are the best way that you can identify them and tell them apart from some native stink bugs that are common in California. This pest is important because it can feed on over 100 different plant species, and they use their piercing, sucking mouthparts to feed on fruits like apples, peaches, citrus, tomatoes, peppers, beans, trees, and ornamental plants. They cause scarring, sunken spots, deformed fruit pods, and they make the produce unmarketable and unappetizing. So the important thing is that they overwinter in large groups. They like to hang out in your attics, walls, garages. And they don't cause structural damage, but they are a nuisance pest, and they like to chew on all of our fruit. So keep an eye out for these. Here's some examples, them hanging out on the leaves, some damage that they cause to the fruit. Things you can do. Check that you're seeing the bug. There are some similarities here. There's a couple different types of stink bugs. They are established in many parts of California, especially in urban areas. You can see on the map on the right. They have been detected and are established in several areas. If you see them in areas where they haven't been established, you can contact your agricultural commissioner's office to report them. Things you can do around your house. Exclude them from buildings. Seal gaps around windows, doors, and siding areas. Again, this is a bug that it's important to physically remove. Handpick or vacuum the bugs to get rid of the infestation. There are commercially available traps you can use to monitor the population. You can encourage natural enemies. There are some pests, especially birds, that like to eat these bugs. Insecticides are generally not effective against BMSB, so exclusion is the most important way to get rid of these. One pest we want to make sure we highlighted today is also the Japanese beetle. This is another pest that is not established in California. It has been detected in limited areas, but again, it is not established in California, and it has been eradicated when it has been detected. Please watch for this pest. This is a small beetle, as you can see in the top right picture there. On the left is a Japanese beetle. On the right is a green June beetle, which is something that most of us have seen as we've been hanging out in our gardens or outside in areas. The Japanese beetle is easily identified by the white tufts that run along the abdomen, you can see, and the size you can look for. This is an extremely destructive garden pest. It'll eat almost anything in your garden. It likes flowers, fruit, and even the roots in your lawn. Both the adult and the larvae are destructive, so we have to watch out for both of them. Make sure. So the important thing to know about Japanese beetle is it also, the reason it keeps coming to California and we have to keep eradicating it is it's hitchhiking on nursery stock, it's hitchhiking on sod, and then sometimes in soil. It keeps arriving here, so we have to be careful of what we're buying. Always buy your stock from trusted sources. Check from the nursery when you bring things home. If you do find the Japanese beetle, please report it to CDFA. There's a link that we'll send you in our email from this webinar that shows you where you can report this pest. In the upper right-hand picture, we wanted to show this. This was a bottle of an insecticide sold at a local store, maybe Home Depot or Lowe's. It shows a Japanese beetle in California on a pesticide label. These are, even though it's on the bottle, doesn't mean it's in California. So we just wanted to point that out. So Japanese beetle, extremely rare to see in California, but we do want to watch for it. Make sure to check your nursery stock, your sod, your soil. If you see signs of it, make sure you report it, please. I wanted to quickly highlight a few common invasive weeds in the garden. Always check around your garden, around your property. There's things that might escape. Common ones that have escaped garden areas are English ivy, tree of heaven, big leaf periwinkle, and the Bermuda buttercup. They tend to crowd out other plants and are very difficult to remove once they're established. And these plants all started out as ornamentals. Someone liked them, they brought them in, they loved the way they looked, and now they have escaped and they started taking over native areas. When you go to the nursery, you can avoid bringing home invasive plants. You can inspect your nursery plants for weeds, and you can always do your research and check that the plants you're bringing home are the actual ones you want, or buy native plants for your garden. We've talked about reporting invasive pests. We want to make sure that you are aware of how to do that and what resources you have. We will send this out also in our email, so you have some resources you can review on your own. The CDFA website and other state and local agencies encourage residents to report the invasive pests so that action can be taken to manage them. Some invasive pests we talked about today are already established in California, like the Argentine ants. These pests don't usually need to be reported. So in general, report invasive pests that are not known to be in California or in your area. And quarantine pests that are being actively managed by the state and local agencies. One of the most recent ones we've seen is the invasive fruit flies. There's some cultural control practices that you could keep in mind to help you prevent, in general, pests from taking over your garden. We are part of the UC IPM statewide program, and we want to encourage practices that avoid any kind of broad spectrum, overuse of broad spectrum pesticides, overcrowding your garden, not underwatering or overwatering. Stressed and sick plants are always more susceptible to pests and diseases. Monitor your plants regularly. Always check for signs of pest damage. Maintain your healthy soil, proper drainage. One of the biggest things you can do with a lot of these invasive pests and diseases is choose resistant varieties. Do your research when you're starting a new garden or a new orchard. And you can always time your plantings or your harvest times to avoid the pest life cycles that would damage your plant and your harvest at the most. Do your research ahead of time. We have a lot of resources on our website, again, that we'll send some links out to that show those. And here's some examples of those. We have a lot of resources related to specific pest types and for specific crops. We highlighted tomatoes, figs, citrus, grapes specifically today, and then we gave you some examples of a lot of generalist type pests that attack specific things. So please use those resources. Again, you can also utilize your local master gardener group to get some really good pointers on how to manage those pests in your garden. Pay attention to what invasives might impact those gardens, and if you see some of those that are reportable, please, please, please use those reporting links. Here's some resources and some support we have to provide these webinars from all of you, all sorts of ways. We're going to send these links out to all you. I'm trying not to take up too much more time. And We want to make sure you protect your patch, defend the pests, and enjoy a harvest that's all yours. Thank you for learning with us today. If you have some questions for us, go ahead and post those in the Q&A. We want to make sure that you keep your harvest healthy and grow food for your family, not for the bugs.
Thank you, Cherie and Lindsey. That was great. A lot of information on just a handful of invasive pests that we have in California. Obviously, in a 1-hour webinar, we can't get through them all, but that was wonderful information about pests, invasive pests that can impact our homegrown produce and our backyard trees.